It is the mother-in-law of all emails, a missive to a young woman from her fiancé's stepmother accusing her of being rude, uncouth, lacking in basic manners. Heidi Withers was so shocked by Caroline Bourne's email that she forwarded it to some friends who sent it on again, turning it into an internet sensation. Meet Mrs. Caroline Bourne, an award-winning flower grower from Devon and possibly the most terrifying future mother-in-law in the world. When her stepson Freddie brought fiancée Heidi Withers home for the weekend, Mrs. Bourne was less than impressed.
If you want to be accepted by the wider Bourne family, I suggest you take some guidance from experts with utmost haste. When a guest in another's house, you do not lie in bed until late morning in households that rise early. You fall in line with house norms.
Suggesting Heidi would be a prime candidate for the Ladette to Lady show, little did Mrs. Bourne expect her email to be forwarded to friends and end up going viral on the internet. Not just a matter of manners, Mrs. Bourne was also unhappy with the couple's wedding plans.
No one gets married in a castle unless they own it. It is brash, celebrity-style behaviour.
With its picnics, pims, strict dress code, Henley Regatta is far from brash, rather a bastion of old-school Englishness. Channel 4 News went to find out what visitors there made of Mrs. Bourne's guide to etiquette.
Well, I think it's all to do with your style. I mean, the message is fine, but actually, the style's got to be right.
It's full par for the course for a mother-in-law anyway, isn't it?
I have 3 sons, and there is no way I would ever even consider telling any of my daughters-in-law.
I think there is a mismatch of expectation between the generation of what is acceptable and what is not. And I think that it's just a question of actually keeping the conversation going as to how we do things. So I don't think it's helpful to send emails like that.
Younger generation may not have picnic tables and wine glasses, but they were equally unimpressed.
She seems like she wants to help, but I think the way she worded it was kind of bad, a bit rude.
There's certain etiquettes, but wouldn't you want to be pulled aside? That's manners. Just speaking face to face is manners about something, saying I don't appreciate that.
Sleeping in the morning is really not a major difference. This should not be something that comes up when you're talking about a marriage. Something really petty and small, I think.
Women of a certain age all over the country will be cheering the Mrs. Disgusted of Dawlish, Devon, to the rafters for having had the guts to set it out before this young woman entered her family.
Today, the Bourne family would not comment, but Heidi's father returned the compliments by calling Mrs. Bourne snotty and a Miss Fancy Pants. Is this what they call a clash of etiquette? Well, whatever it is, it would seem to promise a more than intriguing wedding day. So, was Mrs. Bourne right to say her future daughter-in-law would be an ideal candidate for ITV programme Ladette to Lady? Joining me now, the show's etiquette teacher herself, Liz Brewer, who is the author of The Ultimate Guide to Party Planning and Etiquette. Well, let us go through this. Let's start with food. The stepmother-in-law says, when you are a guest in another's house, you do not declare what you will and will not eat, correct? Etiquette?
You know, John, the issue here is to do with, she is a hostess and she's entertaining a guest. Now, a hostess would normally, if you've got a house guest coming or if you're giving a dinner, they would first of all find out, are there any allergies, do you eat meat, etc. You know, I have got great sympathy with either side. I've got sympathies definitely with the potential mother-in-law, because there is nothing more frustrating than a young woman who's under your roof, who doesn't know how to behave and is intending to marry your stepson.
But you see, the problem is, it seems to me that on etiquette terms, Mrs. Bourne didn't do her homework, didn't check that the girl was a diabetic.
I absolutely agree with you. She didn't. And in which case, not only was she at fault in that particular case, but also she was at fault in the way she addressed this particular problem.
Well, 1-0 to Heidi then.
So, OK, 1-0 to Heidi.
Let me then take you on to, when you're a guest in another's house, you do not lie in bed until late in the morning when the household rises early.
Normally, as a guest, you would find out what time breakfast was. The hostess would tell you what time breakfast is. It's sort of 8 till 9 or 9 to whatever. You know, young people today frequently don't get up in the mornings. Now, whatever the reason is, they don't.
I've already lost you, because I'm not sure anyone has a breakfast time anymore, do they?
Yes, they do. If you're staying in a house party or in a house, I don't know if you've zoomed in. I actually zoomed in on their house. It's quite a substantial property. It's fairly impressive. And
So
I'm
you'd have to
certain-
have a time for breakfast,
You
because
know,
otherwise you might get lost getting there.
But Carolyn is obviously brought up in a world where you know there is a certain code of behaviour, and there's a reason for that.
So that's 1-0 to Mrs. Bourne. So it's 1-all at the moment.
So it's, okay, 1-all.
1-all at the moment.
If you're judging.
Right, let's get to the critical thing. Now, when you have been to stay, you should be sending a handwritten card to me.
You should say thank you. Now, young people
No email,
today,
wouldn't that do?
Young
No.
people today, hardly any of them, I think, can write, let alone they're very good at doing all this and texting, and their lives are so busy, and I don't think they put pen to paper.
So etiquette-wise?
Etiquette-wise, if she'd said thank you, I think the
Just
issue-
said it as she left.
No, not just said it, but had either written it. It seems this mother-in-law does email, therefore it could have been an email.
My sense at the very end is that you're slightly on the side of Mrs. Bourne.
I am actually, I'm critical on both sides.
I'm going to leave it like that. It's a score draw at 1-all because we couldn't quite decide the final factor. Thank you very much indeed for
Not
coming
at
in,
all,
Liz Brewer.
not at